a good way of looking at Ukraine today is by dividing up the foreign policy from the domestic, because there's far more good news, I would say, on the foreign policy front than on the domestic front. One of the reasons for that is that Vladimir Putin is overstretching himself in Russia. And when I'm doing comparisons of this period of time for Russia and earlier, to me it just resembles so much the 1980s, when you have a declining Soviet economy, declining oil price, and at the same time the Soviet Union goes on an expansionist foreign policy, which leads to the collapse of the Soviet Union. So it's very good that Vladimir Putin's decided to intervene in Syria. Very good from Ukraine's point of view. He's turned the huge, and this is the majority of the Islamic world, the Sunni population, against Russia. You see this in so many different ways. Firstly, in Saudi Arabia's refusal to increase the oil price, and let's remember Russia is a petro-mafia state reliant on the export of oil and gas. And secondly, the fact that countries like Saudi Arabia are going to be intervening with Turkey as an ally in support of Crimean Tatars, Chechens, fighting against Kadyrov, the pro-Russian Kadyrov. And even, I was a few weeks ago in Poland, Poland is increasingly importing its oil from Saudi Arabia. Surprise, surprise. So Putin shooting himself in the foot, and the last example of that is Turkey. Turkey now is going to be a country that Ukrainian leaders would be foolish not to try to lobby, because the more anti-Russian Turkish leaders were evident in the 1990s. These were people and political leaders more linked to the Ataturk legacy, which was pro-European, anti-Russian, and pro-Ukrainian, pro-Crimean Tatar. The Islamicist parties came to power about 15 years ago for the first time, and they had a very pragmatic relationship with Russia, including 60% of Turkish gas was imported from Russia. That's all about to change, all because of one plane and one pilot, and the overreaction on the part of Russia to this act. So Turkey is now going to become less anti-American, more pro-NATO, and certainly more pro-Crimean Tatar, pro-Ukrainian. That's something that's in our favor as well. I think that what here is interesting as well is that Russia is seeking allies abroad, but is finding very few of them. Surprisingly, it's finding very few in the European Union. There are a few, like Italy is wavering on sanctions, maybe Greece, but the majority seem to be sticking behind Germany on the sanctions against Russia, which are hurting Russia a lot. And also countries like China and Iran, with whom Russia's tried to establish kind of strategic alliances against the United States, against the West, have not really worked, because Russia needs China far more than China needs Russia. Russia's a declining power, China is a rising power. And therefore, China has no need to kind of mess around with the international rules of the game. It's no need to get, into conflict with other emerging powers such as Turkey or existing powers like the US. So Russia, in that sense, is actually increasingly isolated. And an example of that was this week, where I posted on Facebook an article about how China is now planning to build military aircraft in Ukraine, and so China, the old fear that somehow China and Russia were going to create this anti-Western alliance, I think, was highly exaggerated.